Welcome to Know Your Balls podcast, a podcast where you got to know your balls, you got to know your stuff when you're coming on here. And we've got a great episode on the docket today. I'm Robbie Carr-Gloth as usual. I'm back, had a nice week off, and now I get to chill with my guy, Robbie Williams. Robbie, it's good to see you, my man.
Good
you guys were able to hold it. You guys were able to hold it down pretty well in my absence, but it's good to be back.
I missed you.
I saw there was a lack of a terrible joke at the end. Does that mean that that's gonna stay that way? Like
maybe I don't know. We'll see when we get to the end of the episode today. If I can think of a joke by the end of the episode, I'll give it to you.
So in addition to the return of the Mac, we got Avi and Robbie as usual, but we have one of our top sports contributors at Tonique, Colin Hamingson, joining us from bitter cold Brooklyn, New York, still in May. Colin, good to see you and good to have you on.
What's up, guys? Thank you so much for having me on. Really looking forward to getting into the episode today. It's going to be a great time.
Of course, and I can see, Colin, you're wearing your Brooklyn Nets gear. Brooklyn Nets all the way. New York football team?
No, actually. Growing up, I had friends that were really just sort of asses about both the Giants and the Jets. So when Madden 11 came out, I kind of just gravitated to the Saints. And since then, that's what I've been about.
Really? A New Orleans Saints fan in Brooklyn, New York. How about that? There's a little bit of everything. Hey, but you've probably been a lot happier than the typical New York football fan. So
it's been nice over the past couple years, but some more heartbreak.
Well, it must be interesting being in an upper class of NFL franchise compared to the Jets and the Giants. Speaking of the NFL, we'll start off with obviously the story that dominated the NFL draft, the Aaron Rodgers drama, and the subsequent Adam Schefter drama that came after it. We'll also look at the Machine, a.k.a. Albert Pujols, one of the greatest players ever. The Angels moving on from him. Another big piece of NFL news, the Juwan James injury. There's a lot of conversation around that. We'll get into that. And then, of course, the NBA playoffs are on the horizon. We're only a week or so away, and there's a lot of talk now about the 7th seed, the 8th seed, and the play-in tournaments. Maybe not even being in the playoffs at all, the play-in tournament as a whole. LeBron James, he has thoughts on that. He has thoughts on everything. So we'll get to all of that. First, again, want to shout out and thank Tell ABQ. Download the Tell ABQ app. You can listen to podcasts such as this one and others from Tonique online and on the app. So let's get right into it. The Aaron Rodgers drama, as everyone who follows the NFL and really sports in general knows, Aaron Rodgers, NFL MVP last year. He's a big deal. When he speaks, the world listens. And reporting from Adam Schefter said that Aaron Rodgers does not want to return to the Packers. He has told some within the organization he never wants to return to the team. There was a reportedly leaked trade offer from the 49ers where they checked in with Green Bay about his potential availability. There's a whole big back and forth. Even Brett Favre, his predecessor, the Hall of Fame Packers quarterback, he chimed in on it. So, Colin, you got something coming out soon about this whole situation. What is like the meat of the story for you? Like, what is it specifically about this that's like, oh, I got to pay attention to that?
So as I've been doing my research, it's been really interesting to see and to try and figure out where all of these leaks are coming from. And, you have stuff like the original stuff where it's like, oh, Aaron wants out. And then you have stuff, Jay Glazer tweeted out, hey, the Jeopardy execs, like, yeah, they like what Aaron's got. And then, you have leaks saying, oh, he's calling his GM Jerry Krause. And in my opinion, it's kind of easy to look at that specific one and be like, oh, Aaron definitely didn't leak that, because in his history of being in the NFL, he's always been extremely careful about what he wants to put out. So it's really fun to sort of look at the different perceptions of each leak and to figure out, okay, well, who's really trying to put stuff out and who wants to push this sort of narrative, whether it's the Packers GM to try and put pressure on Aaron to get him to come back or to drive up his trade price. It's just really interesting because, you know, when Schefter reported that on the draft or the day of the draft, you're like, oh my God, this is that, you know, maybe this is the Packers and maybe they're just trying to, you know, get a quick pick to try and take one of these quarterbacks. And then as the information comes out more, and I think it was maybe Tuesday that Schefter was on, I think it was the Rich Eisen show, right? Where he said that...
I think it was Dan Patrick.
Dan Patrick. All those old ESPN and, you know, guys, they all just get mixed up. Anyway, I think it's so interesting that he was like, no, this was not breaking news. I just decided to put this forward the day of the draft. I think that's a little bit of BS because that doesn't just fall into your lap, right? And there was this guy, Paul Allen, who had reported that he was the first one to report on the 49ers poking around for Aaron Rodgers. And I just think it's so interesting that, like, oh, of course this is all breaking the day of the draft. It's got to be because, you know, the Packers wanted to drive up his price and potentially get a new quarterback.
I always find that whenever we see a sports story, that the reporting of that story is like not quite, like almost on par with the story itself. That kind of blows me away. Robbie, I don't know if you thought the same thing, but it was also like as mind like altering and league altering as this news was, it was like, it's interesting that it's coming out now.
Well, yeah, it's funny to see it develop too, because I know I wasn't the only one watching the draft that night. And, you know, probably 10 minutes before everything gets started, you know, they bring on Schefter, Shifty Sheft, and he drops this bombshell, you know, like it's breaking news or whatever. And I thought there was something up with it too. A lot of people were thinking, you know, like you said, the Green Bay was doing it or somebody else trying to make things happen on draft night. But really, you know, it seems like, you know, Schefter just has a good understanding of marketing, and just knows like, hey, everyone's already tuning in. They'll stay tuned in more often if, you know, they think something might happen with Aaron Rodgers tonight.
Yeah, I mean, ESPN can't be disappointed with what he's done. I mean, he's doing his job, and like, there's always I've had this debate before. Is like, is Adam Schefter a journalist? Like, I don't know. Like, he's got a guy with a Twitter account, and he has a lot of sources. But like, this is always a debate. And when it comes to like maybe the biggest NFL story of the offseason, possibly. I mean, Robbie, like, I saw countless memes on Twitter about how all NFC North fans are jumping for joy because, like, you know, there's hope now.
Yeah, no, there's hope. You don't have to play them twice a year. You know, the amount of heartbreaking losses to Aaron Rodgers over the course of his career has left me a damaged person, I think.
I think it's also really incredible to look at the quarterback class of the NFC North and sort of over the past couple years, how it's absolutely just fallen off a cliff. And, you know, you go from Aaron Rodgers and Matt Stafford and, you know, Jay Cutler was fine. You know, I don't want to put too much on Jay Cutler. You know, he's all right. And now it's going to be Andy Dalton, whatever happens with the Packers, Kirk Cousins, and Jared Goff. Like, come on now. What a drop off. And another thing that was really interesting was apparently the Atlantic reported that the Packers tried to make Rodgers the richest quarterback in the NFL, and that was per year. And that's part of Rodgers' gripes, apparently, is that after, the season, the guaranteed money going forward makes it a lot easier for Rodgers to move. So he feels that, you guys traded up to draft Jordan Love, didn't even consult me about it. Going into the season after next season, I don't have a ton of stability and, faith in this organization. So, what's up, guys? I think it's really interesting that the Packers, why would you even draft Jordan Love in the first place? I know this is a story from a year ago, but if you look back at that draft, they traded up for Jordan Love, and then they drafted a running back in the second round when they already had Jamal Williams and
Aaron Jones.
And Aaron Jones. And I don't know. For me, that was a huge slap in the face to Aaron. And, Aaron's kind of always been known as the petty superstar, but I get it, Aaron. I get it.
So that what you're saying is something that I find interesting, and I wish we had a Packers fan on to talk about this, but the consensus I've seen from the Packers fan base is they're not upset necessarily at Aaron Rodgers more than they are at Packers management. Like it's like they didn't really give him a choice. They, like you said, they trade up to draft a quarterback with what I think it was 3 years at the time left on Rodgers' contract. They had just gone to the NFC Championship game. They went 13-3 in the regular season. They had wide receivers to draft. I think it was I don't remember if that was the DK Metcalf draft. I remember he was like a late second round pick the year he was drafted. But what?
It was the year before that.
Oh, it was the year before. Okay, so forget that. But there were wide receivers that like the Packers were infamously known for not taking a wide receiver. I think they took one this year in like the third or fourth round. Talk about too little, too late. but like Packers fans seem to I guess understand and justify Aaron Rodgers' actions. It all started with Jordan Love. I think there was some random receiver who I have never heard of that he had complimented publicly, and then they cut him the next day.
Jake Kumaro.
Jake Kumaro. Yeah, and there's the whole Jeopardy complication to it as well. Like that's one of those like wrinkles that is unique to the situation. It's not like in typical standoffs between an athlete and a player, you have the Jeopardy potential in the background. So I mean, I've never been impressed with Green Bay's recent decision making. They've had some good draft picks. They build their organization through the draft, but I mean, from penny pinching in free agency to the drafting the wrong position seemingly in the first couple rounds, it's been boiling for a while, it seems. And like Adam Schefter said, it's not like this all of a sudden happened. It was an accumulation of information.
Yeah, like I think where they really messed up was not like blindsiding Aaron Rodgers with the Jordan Love pick. Like the fact that he didn't know at all that they were going to do that trade up, and I think if you have a conversation with a guy and you're like, look, you're getting older. We don't play the free agency game. We got to bring someone in here because you could get injured or, move on or whatever and retire. So I get why they drafted a quarterback. I mean, they did the same thing with Favre and Rodgers, so there's a history of this. But I think they really screwed the pooch when they basically did it like behind his back and also like right in front of his face on draft night, where he's just sitting there like, what? I got this.
Do you really think, Robbie, that would have made a tangible difference? Like if they told him beforehand that they were planning on drafting a quarterback in the first round? Because I'm not sure that would make much of a difference, right? Like we're like, hey, we're drafting a quarterback in the first round. Oh, thanks for telling me. Like that's better than what they did, but like still they're drafting his replacement and trading up to get him in the first round.
I think, he's been that guy, is what I'm saying. It's like he's the guy who's taken it, been the beneficiary of their system of, all right, we're gonna draft, let this guy sit a little bit, and then bring him in. And as an older quarterback, you gotta have some understanding for the fact that, like, look, you're not gonna play into, for the next 80 years. So, everybody's got to do what they got to do. I think you have to draft a quarterback eventually. Maybe not last year. Maybe that wasn't the best time. But eventually you're going to have to do this. And when you do it, you got to have a conversation with the guy if you want to keep him around as long as possible and be like, look, you're our dude, but things happen, so you got to have somebody to back you up. And I don't know. It's definitely better than not talking to him and doing it. And, I don't think they should have drafted a quarterback and then a running back last year. I think that was just a bad move. But I think if you're going to draft a quarterback, you got to at least talk to him. And now that you haven't talked to him, well, now he's like, obviously at any moment I could just be, tossed to the wind because I'm getting older. So that doesn't feel very good. So I think communication would have been key in this situation. For sure.
Do y'all think he's actually going to get traded?
Yes.
I think it's either that or he's gone. Like he'll retire. Like that seems like a viable option for him. He has potential, a lot of potential for in a retirement life. So
I'm sorry, what were you gonna say? Okay.
Go ahead. No, I'm gonna say something stupid.
So I was in doing my research, you look at these, you go to the Packers beat writers, and a lot of the Packers beat writers are like, nah, it feels like he's gone. And in my opinion, it's like, okay, well, where are you going to go, right? Where is a quarterback needy team that has the talent around to compete? And you're going to have to compete this year, because if you're trading for Aaron Rodgers, you're giving up at least 2 first-round picks minimum. So that's going to be talent that's not coming into your team. So then, you look, you're like, okay, let's see his apparent list of teams that he wants to go to. Oakland, they just reshuffled their line.
Vegas,
their defense
Las
is
Vegas,
Oakland. Oh my goodness.
Not
old
Oakland.
Habits die hard. They just completely trashed and are resetting their line. Their defense is abysmal. Head coach questionable at best. Denver, okay, yeah, there's some stuff going on there, but do you want to play in Denver when you've gone 13-3 the past 2 seasons? You've been to the NFC Championship the last 2 seasons. Like, what do you really want here? What's going on? As a Saints fan, I would love to see him go to New Orleans. And Brett Favre, as you mentioned earlier, kind of joked with him, like, oh, I'll see you with the Saints. And, I perked my ears up at that. And I was like, oh, that sounds like a nice idea. But unfortunately, we don't have the resources to get him.
I don't think many teams do.
Exactly.
So, yeah, Aaron Rodgers. Crazy stuff going on. Adam Schefter, the whole thing. So obviously we'll keep an eye on that. I wouldn't say if this was a 30 for 30, I don't think it'd be quite as good as one on Deshaun Watson in his situation.
Ooh.
But I think this will be very intriguing to look at when we, in 5 years or 10 years or however long it is, however long the turnaround is for 30 for 30s. So looking forward, Colin, to seeing your piece when this comes out. Major League Baseball, probably the biggest news, aside from all these no-hitters going on in Major League Baseball. Albert Pujols, someone who people know that name, even if they're not necessarily a baseball fan, a.k.a. the Machine, one of the greatest baseball players ever. He was designated for assignment by the Los Angeles Angels, meaning they have 7 days to basically get rid of him. They can waive him, release him, trade him, or put him into the minors. But like Albert Pujols isn't going to the minors. Like, I don't care what he's hitting. He was hitting 198. He had 5 home runs. He's in the final year of a 10 or 11-year contract. I forget what number that is, but it was like 240 million. He was like the epitome of like the Angels making good moves on paper that don't pan out. They have probably the best player, one of the greatest players ever already in Mike Trout, and I think he's been in the playoffs once, maybe twice. I don't think they've won a
I don't think he's
series or
made it.
anything. I'm pretty sure he made it like 1 year to I think a wild card game maybe. But regardless, his postseason experience is very limited as it is. Albert Pujols is like the face of that, I guess, disappointment for the Angels, and to see them just get rid of this guy. I mean, he's in the last year of his deal, so I don't, it's not really going to hinder them too much financially. But uh, he's been there ever since Mike Trout was there. Mike Trout learning from a future Hall of Famer. I'm interested to hear what you guys make of this, and in terms of raw production, yeah, I can see why you might want to drop him off. But is there any kind of like caveat for a future Hall of Famer like Pujols?
Man, my grandfather's from the Midwest, and he is a massive St. Louis Cardinals fan. So growing up, I was always aware of Albert Pujols. And, I remember, I think it was like 2011 when he left the Cardinals to sign with the Angels. And I remember him being like, oh, it's too much. They gave him too much. And I was thinking about that when researching to come on, and, you go and you look on his baseball reference page, and I don't want to say it's abysmal, but it's not good at all. You look at the money that he was making, and during his time in Anaheim or Los Angeles or whatever they're going by now, he only made the All-Star team once. He never hit over 300, and like OPS just keeps going down. And I think there is certain value to having him mentoring Mike Trout and, being there for the rise of Ohtani. But man, that's $200 million that you kind of just flush down the toilet. The most expensive mentor in the history of baseball, possibly. Yeah. What do you think?
The most expensive man.
Well, I makes sense what you're saying. You need the production out of him, but also as somebody who's, I'm a huge Tigers fan, and we still got Miguel Cabrera. And Miguel Cabrera isn't what Miguel Cabrera used to be. He had a streak here of, either no hits or single hit games for a while. And in the past 2 games, they actually just won last night, and it was his second, 2-hit game in a row. He had some RBIs, and they were talking about it, how he's looking a little bit better. And I was just thinking, man, they're actually talking about Miguel Cabrera looking better. He always looked the best, like it's sad to see him declining, but every time he gets a hit, I'm like, yeah, no, I don't know exactly what we're paying Miguel Cabrera, but I get the sentimentality of a great player.
I mean, you brought Miguel Cabrera. Miguel Cabrera and Albert Pujols were like as good as it gets, like 2000s, even early 2010s. Like these guys are like players that when you're telling your kids about, like, oh, I got to see this guy play. Like I got to go to a game and this guy play. And I don't think we should shortchange these dudes who are gonna end up in Cooperstown. But yeah, I think it's interesting now to see what happens with Pujols. If another team wants to pick him up, obviously they won't have that massive load of a contract on their back. But I think it'd be cool for him to go back to the Cardinals. That's like that. Those were the the years in the franchise that really exploded. And I didn't grow up a big baseball fan. I became a bigger baseball fan later. It was actually when I moved to New York, because you have to be a baseball fan when you live in New York. But the St. Louis Cardinals brand was really helped a lot in recent years by Pujols. I think it'd be really cool to see him go back to the Redbirds to end his career. I can't be the only one with that thought.
No, I mean it's definitely sort of the sort of thing they do in the NFL when they bring the player back for the 1-day contract and then they have him retire. I think it's it's definitely some nice sentimentality, but I don't know. The Redbirds have always been a very, very smart team. So, we'll see if they bring them in, increase some jersey sales for a little bit.
But keep the price down.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
They'll get a chance to renegotiate. But yeah, I think like a 1 day or so contract, that the NFL's symbolic signings. I definitely see what you mean. The Cavs had a symbolic signing recently with Anderson Varejao. So well, there's everywhere. Everyone has that.
Andy
we can
Varejao.
we can maybe touch on that in a bit. But first, again, want to thank Tell ABQ. Make sure to check out Tell ABQ or download the Tell ABQ app where you can listen to this podcast on Tell ABQ podcast and all the other Tonique stuff on there. We shout out to all the great people in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Moving on to another NFL story, Juwan James. This is something that has really picked up steam as of late. Obviously, it's overshadowed by Mr. Rodgers in Green Bay, but still an important story and something that I think will be discussed a lot in terms of the relationship between the NFL Players Association and the league itself. Just for some background for those who don't know, Juwan James, he was a tackle. I think he played at Tennessee, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was.
That's
Tennessee.
correct.
It was an SEC school. It was a big deal. So he was a first round pick back in 2014. I believe he was drafted by the Dolphins. He was signed back a couple of years ago. I believe in 2019, a 4-year, $51 million contract with Denver. The offensive tackle game is a big one. They make a lot of money. It's a valuable position. 4 years, $51 million. At the time maybe didn't seem like a lot, but then he suffered a knee injury, and then he opted out of 2020. And recently, shortened the story, he's been a disappointment, right? He hasn't lived up to that contract. Now, this is something that the Players Association and players around the league, Patrick Mahomes, I believe, has even tuned in and given his voice to this. He suffered a potentially season-ending Achilles tendon tear during an off-site workout, so not with the team, not at the team facilities. And the Broncos now the NFL is clarifying a rule saying that they don't have to pay certain guarantees in his contract if he gets injured off site. And this really outraged a lot of players because he was actively rehabbing and practicing and working out and getting his body in shape for his job. But they seem to be punishing him for doing that. I do understand it from the owner's perspective. They do need to have some kind of, safeguard on it. But to lose all, if not his whole contract over this, this really spurred the discussion. So I'll open up to the floor. What you guys think about this?
I think it's a hell of a technicality to get burned on, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, you're just trying to do your best, like you said, and you just happen to be off-site, which that's the only part of the story that kind of confuses me is, well, if it's in your contract that, if you get injured on-site, you're fine. If you get injured off-site, if you knew that, why would you ever, take the chance and work out off-site? That was my confusion with this story.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things where it's like, classic NFL, just penny pinching and always looking for the tricky little words in the contract. And it's so funny because, well, I don't know if funny is the right word, but there's just this inherent expectation of, you're going to show up, you're going to be in shape, you're going to be ready to play, but you're not. Like, the NFL is not responsible for that time in which you are supposed to be ramping up to play in the NFL. It just gives me shades similar to the NCAA and their sort of policy of not paying players and sort of getting around all these little tight corners and being like, oh, nope, he was off site. Hey, not our problem. Not our facility, not our problem. I don't know. To me, it's damn messed up.
I hear you, but also think of it in terms of like any other job, right? If you work in a tool and die shop and you don't hurt yourself at work, and then you go home and you start working on your car and you do something and, chop your hand off. Is your job responsible because you were doing a similar type of work, not with them, on your own in your own time, something they didn't even tell you to go do?
My only rebuttal to that is that, he's working on his body. So, that's work for the Denver Broncos. So, I understand technicalities and all. I just still think morally it's like, oh, this is nasty.
I think both. So go ahead, Robbie.
Well, I agree with you. Like it's terrible for him. Like it sounds terrible, but like from a legal perspective, we're talking about his contract here and money, and I mean, this isn't baseball. We got a cap space to deal with, and that's a lot of money to pay somebody who has literally done nothing for your franchise the entire time they've been on this contract. And I don't know, it's tough because if you're looking at it from the player's perspective, like I get why if you're a player, you want to change this because you want to work out as much as possible and get your body in the best shape as possible, and be able to be protected while you do that. But also from the perspective of the owners, it's like, this guy could have had this injury 2 games into the season. It's kind of like a liability that they knew was there, but he's under contract, and it's complicated.
Definitely complicated.
I think there are two sides, and you guys are both making some good points. I think this conversation, in the midst of the greater context of players right now, pushing back on showing up to voluntary workouts at team facilities. The president of the NFL Players Association, J.C. Tretter, who's the starting center for my Cleveland Browns, he has made a lot of claims that the offseason that they had last year, in the midst of the pandemic, they were still able to get new systems implemented. They were still able to play a full year. Their claim, and then the NFL Players Association claim, is that the NFL, more so than any other professional league, baseball, football, hockey, whatever you want to call it, they have the most amount of required time at team facilities during the off season, with OTAs and minicamp training, all that. Because the claim is, you need to practice in the off season, but they proved last year that they didn't. And so I think part of the claim, part of the problem here is Juwan James. He was working on a work-related incident. If he got hurt, riding a motorcycle or something, or if he tried something, that like bungee jumping or whatever, I don't know, something dangerous, something whatever, like that's a different story. But he was actively doing something for his job. He wasn't doing it there. So
it's not Kellen Winslow situation.
Right. It's not one of those. Gosh, Kellen Winslow, that was a deep cut. That hurt me real good.
Sorry.
But yeah, he's in prison now for something completely different. But
my God.
Completely different than the motorcycle crash incident. But I definitely think there needs to be some kind of balance. I think I think it's hard to fault a guy for working out, like to work out, because you need to do that to be in the National Football League. But so I do see the owner liability part.
So what you're saying is like he was working off site because he couldn't be working on site?
No. So again, it's like part of the greater context of NFL players not wanting to have to go into the team facilities because they feel like it's unnecessary, and it's like oversight that shouldn't be required, and that isn't necessary. And they feel like they proved that last year, And so I don't know if you've been seeing this, but like all these NFL teams collectively have been opting out of voluntary workouts. I think the Lions were one of those
Because
teams.
last year they did
think so,
so
one
much offsite on their own because of the pandemic. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But also from an owner's perspective, it's kind of like monitoring your investments. Like I want to have my trainers, my doctors, looking you over and giving me the feedback on what your physical condition is while you're working out at the team facility, because I'm going to pay you $51 million, to do this job. And I want to make sure you're going to play. So I don't, it seems like a very ticky tacky thing to get upset about and just be like, I don't want to work at, like it'd be like if we had an office and we all lived in the same city, and we all go to work, and then I was just like, nah, I don't want to see you guys. I want to stay home, even though we have an office. Like, just seems weird to me.
I hear you. I just think that with the NFL, specifically with the owners and with the players, there's sort of this mistrust. You have situations with, players like Trent Williams, where, he had a malignant mass that was not diagnosed for, I think it was like 7 years or something. And he repeatedly asked them to check it. And then he got a second opinion. It was like, hey, yeah, this is bad. And, you have situations like with, Tom Coughlin in the Jacksonville Jaguars, where, they find Dante, I think it was Dante Fowler Jr., like, I think it was like close to $1 million for simply not showing up to voluntary workouts. And, so I think there's definitely just a misunderstanding and a disconnect between the higher ups who are like, we're going to do it our way, and, it's not that they're not caring about their bodies, but they're looking at, bottom line stuff more so than, I don't want to make the accusation that they're, putting profits over health, but there's just a history in the NFL. And I understand the sort of mistrust of, hey, in the past, maybe not the Broncos, but other teams have definitely screwed over players just for that extra buck.
I think if you guys listen quietly enough, I think you guys might hear our guy AJ's phone ringing. I think Jerry Jones might be calling him to say how he can get that guy Robbie Williams in his office. I think I can hear it. If you guys listen quietly enough, you can hear Jerry Jones calling our guy AJ. Yeah, so I'm very interested to see how this plays out, and we will definitely see how that progresses. One final, I guess, umbrella of topics. We got the NBA playoffs upon us. Obviously the most popular team in the NBA, possibly, and global brand.
Depends on the age range.
I don't know about that when you have LeBron James. LeBron James and the LA Lakers have fallen to as of right now, the 7th seed in the Western Conference, and it is very interesting to hear LeBron James talk about how the play-in tournament, not a good idea. He said, quote, "Whoever came up with that shit needs to be fired." I find it so interesting, just a coincidence that whenever a team falls into that 7 range, that's when the play-in tournament stinks. That's when it sucks. It just so happened Mark Cuban and Luka Doncic and the Mavericks, they were complaining about it when they just so happened to sink a little lower. So again, just to give some context to those who don't know, usually it's 1 through 8 in each conference that makes the playoffs. This year, instead of an 82-game season, it's 72. So they have a play-in tournament. The 1 through 6 seeds still get their playoff spots. The 7 through 10 seeds in each conference enter a play-in tournament. The 7th seed will play the 8th seed. Whoever wins that game gets the 7th seed. And the 9 and 10 seeds play each other. Whoever loses that game is out. So the loser of the the loser of the 7-8 plays the winner of the 9-10, and then the winner gets the 8th seed. And it's a winner go home. So nobody really, or at least for some teams, nobody wants to be in that play-in tournament. You play 72 games, and it could be all down to one game. So I'm interested to see what you guys say about this. The prospect of the defending champs, the Lakers, losing a couple games in the play-in tournament, they're gone. They're out of the playoff equation. And also, uh, just the thoughts on the play-in tournament as a whole. If you think it's working, if you think it's a good thing for this year, maybe one of you thinks it's should be the permanent solution. I'm curious to hear. I don't know what either of you are going to say.
Well, I think it's kind of, if you're the seventh seed, to be complaining about being in the play-in tournament, it's like, all right, you got to win one more game to get to the playoffs, and if you belong in the playoffs at all, you should be able to step up and win that game. And then if you're, in the 10th seed, ninth seed, you got to win two games to get into the 8th seed, and you're probably not going to go anywhere, but at least it kind of makes things, a little bit more interesting. Every once in a while, one of those teams will go on a run. So I really like the play-in tournament. I think, it would be ridiculous if it was like a full-on like 7-game series to play in, but the fact that it's just like one and done, move on. I think it adds a little spice to the end of the season.
Yeah, so you look at NBA teams as a whole now, and and the situation of tanking. And tanking is sort of down this season. Obviously you have your Houston Rockets and your Cavaliers, no offense. And
None taken.
and
None
and
taken.
your Detroit Pistons. But I feel like tanking overall is really down. And the sort of product of late regular season NBA in the past it's been really sleepy. But
It's been bad.
now it's like, oh my God, like we could have LeBron James and Steph Curry in the same play-in, and then you throw Zion in there and Ja Morant. It's like, hell yeah, I want that. And if you're LeBron James, it's so funny that you mentioned earlier. It's like, of course, now that you have the possibility of playing some extra games or an extra game, like now of course you're complaining, of course, because he can't just coast. In seasons past, after January, LeBron just like, he takes his foot off the gas pedal, gets himself ready for the playoffs. But now he can't do that. Now he has to, go balls to the wall to make sure, like, oh, Steph Curry could kill us. Like last night, he had 49 points, and he is actually carrying the Warriors. I think it's a little, to me, LeBron, very respected, top 3 player in NBA history, but
It's shortchanged a little bit.
I mean, I think that when you're not having the mindset of like, we're the damn Lakers, like we're just gonna go out and whoever the hell we play, we're gonna smoke them. When you're complaining and you're letting it get into your head, it's like what are you doing? You're LeBron James. Just
Yep.
step up, bro.
I do think it is worth pointing out that they and the Miami Heat had the shortest offseason ever. Like they were playing finals games in September, October. I don't remember which.
It was
which
something
month.
ridiculous.
It was, and then they started in December before Christmas.
Yeah.
So I kind of figured going into the season for Miami, they had a very slow start to their season. A lot of that was COVID issues, but they had a very slow start to the year. Lakers seemed fine, but now that the injury bug was catching up to them, I kind of expected this from the Lakers, and I'm kind of surprised how it took until late in the season for them to really start to, like, I guess, break down. But that's, I feel like that's too extreme of a word. I'm only using that because I can't think of anything else. But LeBron James has not really had a long off season like he's used to, or sorry, not necessarily a long off season, but because he's usually playing in the finals. But like this is a historically short break. This is he had a really long break his first year with the Lakers when they missed the playoffs, but he is like a creature of habit. He's like, I'm getting my body ready for this. He knows, he's what, 36 now. Like he can't. He's great, but it takes a lot of work to get to that greatness. I do think the Lakers will still be fine though if they get into the play-in. I mean I don't think you can go in with we're just gonna smoke them, but I do think in a game or two, I want Anthony Davis and LeBron James on my team.
And like, damn, if you're the Utah Jazz or the Phoenix Suns, like, that sucks.
You better hope for Memphis.
Yeah, cross your fingers.
Better hope for the Spurs.
If you're Phoenix, you're like, man, we just got to the playoffs for the first time since 2010, and who are we facing in the first round? LeBron damn James. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I think like any team who draws the Lakers in the first round will be like come on, man. And that's one of those things that like I think is making the league great, especially in the West. I think in the East, it's like you have Philly, you have Brooklyn, you have Milwaukee, and I don't think anyone's picking any other team to get out of the East. Like the Knicks have been a feel-good story this year, but I don't think anyone expects them to go to the finals. There's been some nice runs for certain teams, but it's really just those three teams in the East that people are considering going to the finals. In the West, it is just wide open. It feels like so many teams have a shot. Utah and Phoenix, especially. The Clippers have been really good this year, although until they actually get to the Western Conference Finals, no one will actually think they're going to do it. Denver, everyone expected to be a drop-off when Jamal Murray went down. Instead, Nikola Jokic is solidifying his MVP. And, of course, Portland and Dallas are around. They can make some noise. But the Lakers and if Steph Curry and the Warriors get in, like there's just so much happening in the West. And this is why I feel like the play-in tournament has done its job. Because teams like the Bulls, they would be out. Like the Pacers, the Wizards, Memphis, San Antonio, New Orleans, like all these teams would stop trying to win games at this point, but they are, and there's so many combinations of like great things for us as fans. So I think this has been a complete success. Once they go back to 82 games, they should go back. Zach Smith, one of our guys at Tonique, who wrote an article about similarly about this, but I personally think it has worked pretty well this year.
Oh yeah, I think the Wizards are a great case of why it's worked because they had a very rough start to the season. And since they got Bradley Beal back, they have just been going off. I mean, he had 50 points last night against the Pacers.
Jeez.
So they're battling it out 9-10. And they're going to probably be playing in the play-in tournament. And, that's just great drama, multiple games at the end of the season to see who's 9, who's 10. And then you get to the play-in game and you got to go at each other again. And, I think the Wizards definitely deserve this chance to get into the playoff because they just had a rough start. And since they've gotten their team together, they've proven that, they're everybody as good as everyone else. So, I love it,
Yeah, I'm just gonna definitely agree with both of you. And I think there's so much value in having these young players battling and being like, we need to win these games, and having this sort of non-tank mindset where night in, night out, you need to bust your ass now. You need to bust your ass, or else you are not getting in the play-in game. And you look at high draft picks who have failed on their teams, like, list any Orlando Magic high draft pick from the past, 5 years. Same thing with the Chicago Bulls, Sacramento. And, yes, there's a player development thing, but there's also this, there's a lack of important games that they're playing. And that also definitely impacts a player because I don't know. There's just not nearly as much importance on these games going forward. So your preparation, it doesn't change. But now that I was just gonna say, now that they have to, there is true incentive. They have to win or go home. And I think for a player's development, that is so important.
Yeah, it's a big difference between trying to get in the playing game and signing Anderson Varejao. I gotta jump on that. It was nice to see Wild Thing back in a Cavs uniform, but I would have loved to see actual meaningful games played as well. But I digress. Great job. I think we had a really nice discussion there. Colin, it's been really nice to talk sports with you and chop it up with you. You definitely know your balls. I mean, you got to know your balls when you come on here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. Robbie, I'm afraid to throw it to you.
I didn't think of one. I'm not gonna lie, I didn't think of one.
Oh, okay, we're great.
Great discussion.
We're doing great.
LeBron James should quit whining. Just play. That's my final thought.
Okay. All right. LeBron James should shut up and
no, he got ahead of me. He got ahead of me.
Did he do that? Oh, I don't know. No. Gotta pay respect to the GOAT. I don't know.
Avi Carr Ingram, my goodness.
Yeah. Oh boy, I think I interpreted that, Robbie. I read between the lines there. Again, thank you to Tell ABQ. Make sure to check out Tell ABQ and download the Tell ABQ app, and you can listen to this podcast under Tell ABQ podcast. This has been Know Your Balls. Colin knows his. Robbie knows his. And LeBron James.
I got a rough idea.
Yeah, a rough idea of it. I'm Carr-Gloth, and we'll see you next time on Know Your Balls.
See you guys.